Welcome to this special interview series on women in wellness, the 5 lifestyle tweaks that will help support people's journey towards better well-being. I'm Wanda Malhotra, a lifestyle journalist and CEO of Crunchy Mama Box, a platform promoting conscious living. Today's interview is part of a powerful collaboration with Authority Magazine, a Medium publication that delves deep into topics that truly matter. Today, we will have the pleasure of speaking with Sarah Ezrin, a world-renowned yoga educator, content creator, mama, and the award-winning author of The Yoga Parenting, based in San Francisco Bay Area. Sarah loves guiding people along their wellness and parenthood journeys. Her words, classes, and social media are supportive, healing sources for people to feel seen and heard. This video is a special follow-up to the written interview previously published. For a deeper dive into the complete conversation, follow my column to read the full interview. So now, join us for an exclusive interview with Sarah Ezrin. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Hi, Wanda. I'm so excited. It was so fun to do the long written interview, but now to get here and have eye contact and to go deeper, I'm excited. I'm excited to ask you questions too.
That's great. Thank you. And I have Sarah's book here with me. I am a mother of 3. I was telling Sarah that this book is an amazing guide for all parents. I love it. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. That means so much.
So, first question. Your journey with wellness has evolved significantly from childhood experiences with diet pills to becoming a yoga teacher and author. How do you navigate the balance between personal experiences and the professional aspects of teaching and writing about wellness?
Great question. So just for a little bit of background for people that don't know, is that my forays into wellness, as you mentioned, were probably on the more unhealthy side as a little girl because I was born in 1982. And so by the time I was a preteen, it was very much the supermodel era diet culture. And my mom was a chronic dieter. And so my wellness experience was she actually sold for Herbalife. I don't know if you remember Herbalife, but it was Herbalife was supplements and meal replacements. And it was all these very quick fix processes to lose weight, right? It was never actually sitting down and looking at, well, how am I eating and am I happy and what's going on in my life right now? It was never looking at the bigger picture. It was always let's do the cabbage diet and, see how much weight we can drop. And I was only 9 at the time when she actually let me take diet pills, which is, knowing now, I'm oh my goodness, and having my own children. But different times, different days. But what came out of that as a result of that was that when I did start getting into wellness on my own, I really wanted to seek what the bigger solution was going to be, because all of these things are just band-aids, right? It's not really about losing the numbers on the scale. It's not really about fitting into those genes or, whatever those external measures may be. There's a much more internal drive that we have inside of us. There's a much more it's an intrinsic motivation that we have that I wanted to start seeking. And that's what I started to look into more for myself. I was well, I can move to try to lose weight, or I can move to celebrate my body. I can move to try and, look differently in the mirror, or I can move to just explore what I can do. And it was really changing how I was approaching wellness that shifted my entire relationship with wellness in general. So by the time I got into yoga, it was really it was a landing place for me of kindness, as opposed to another place to just try to fix everything. It was the first place where I was oh my goodness, let's go in, let's find the answers by getting quiet. Let's not worry about what it looks like. There's no mirrors in many yoga studios. It was such a different focus. And then as a result, you end up getting healthier. But it was that shift from everything being how it looks on the outside to what it feels like and what's happening internally.
That is beautiful and so important for young girls and even women. I mean, it's all about health. It's about wellness. It's not about dieting and losing weight and looking a certain way. It's how you feel about yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and a woman that I highly admire named Kimberly Ann Johnson, who wrote the book The Fourth Trimester, recently posted something where she said most women would rather look good than feel good. And that blew my mind, because I mean, I do it myself, right? I'll suffer through a certain outfit, because it's like it photographs well, but like I can't actually breathe in it. And you put yourselves through certain things because externally you want to appear as healthy. But something that happened, and I'll be fully honest, is it started with good intentions. Of course, I'm an A type, and my yoga kind of went to the other end of the extreme where I was almost using it abusively. Because again, I was getting caught up in like, okay, well, what do the poses look like? And how many classes do I have on the schedule? How full are my classes? I got swept up in the, we call it like the small ego, right? And that I had to like swing back from there myself and really remind myself like, no, Sarah, like everything you're teaching your students, this is the same lessons I need to learn for myself. My practice is very different today. It's much kinder. I think it was becoming a mom, honestly, that really made the shift. I don't know how you feel about that, but it was like that was when I had to be really honest with how am I treating my body? What measuring sticks am I using? And what message am I sharing for my kids?
that's exactly what happened to me. I changed a lot of what I believed and how I treated my body after I became a mom as well.
Yeah.
Same thing. I became so much kinder to my body after I became a mom. And you have to, because
Yeah.
your body changes and you have to accept that.
Yeah.
So, yes, I agree. So, the incident with the negative comment during a yoga class taught you a valuable lesson about the impact of words on body image and self esteem. How has this experience influenced your approach to body positivity in your teachings? And what advice do you have for other wellness professionals in fostering a positive and inclusive environment?
Yeah. Great question. So we are referring to, it was a class where I had a gal do a demonstration. She was extreme, I don't even want to talk about her size, but comparatively, I felt bigger in that moment. And I started to make jokes about myself. They were self-deprecating. I would never, ever talk about a student, but I talked about myself in such a negative way. And I was doing this comparison thing, and it was meant to be funny, and people were laughing, because like I can be funny when I make the joke. But afterwards, one of my other students came up to me. Now, little backstory about her is that she works at the eating disorder clinic that I was a patient, and when I was in my early 20s, and when I was doing a lot of the start of this work. But of course, I was also still deep in the work at this moment when this incident happened. But she took me aside and said, we have no idea what's going on with this girl, right? Like she could be ill. Like that could be why she's so small. You don't know, right? So like don't make any assumptions about her, but also by putting yourself down, what message are you sharing to the rest of the students right now? Here we are, we're coming over to look at this pose, and I'm complimenting how great her style is and how well she was aligned and how skinny I mean, I'll just say it, right? She was very skinny, and that's what I was talking about. But like, and that's what I was praising in that moment. And it was like a splash of cold water on my face, because that's not what I think is important. That's not the message I want my students to walk away from. That was just my old demons coming out in this way. And that's not, again, like I said, I don't comment on other people's bodies, and I'm very careful now about the jokes I make about myself. But it was just it was literally a splash of cold water of like, I've got to work on this stuff on my own, off of the mat, outside of this room, with my therapist, with, my mentors, so that when I'm in this room, I can be a very objective teacher and facilitator. And also it changed when people would do a demonstration, we'd all clap afterwards. That was like a very like old school yoga thing. I started to have people stop clapping, and I started to have them say thank you instead. And I would purposely pick people that, this is how it evolved. Where I used to pick people that could nail the pose, quote unquote, whatever that means. It doesn't mean anything, hint, hint. But where people would like do it well, alignment wise, I started to pick people that I knew were only going to get up to, to be able to do the preparation of it. so that we can start focusing on, well, it's not about getting into headstand. Let's work on what's the foundation, what's the alignment of it. Great, that was a big accomplishment for you because you were able to be there for a few seconds more, or you really listened to your body and you came down early. I just really shifted the focus of what was important. And the big piece of that work was that I had to do my own personal work around my body and what was important to me. And, my eating disorder, as I've alluded to, was, I was in and out most of my life, but it was always that thread of yoga that was, that was the foundation to help me find kindness and to find what truly mattered. So it's a real honor to be able to like share that with others now.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. It's very helpful to so many people, not just women, but men, everyone. Thank you. So your lifestyle tweaks emphasize the importance of self-care and mindfulness. Can you share a specific daily ritual or practice that has a profound impact on your own well-being and how you integrate it into your busy life?
Yeah, my number one tip is waking up at 4 in the morning, which I know sounds like a little bit wild. And I mean, I was not an early, I mean, maybe I have always been an early riser because I've been rising early since like my yoga years. Which is like now 20 years, right? 20 plus years. But I don't remember rising early as a kid. I don't remember it like being a thing. But I have always found solace in the morning hours. When I was single, pre meeting my husband and pre children, I would always get up at 5 or 5:30 and do a very early morning practice. And then I met my husband, and I just kind of, it got a little later, and a little later, and a little later. And then when you have kids, your sleep is all over the place. I couldn't imagine waking up early because I was already up for 3 hours earlier in the night. But somehow, when my first son was around 1.5, I was like, I'm going to start getting up early again. I need that time. I need that, even, and I'm not necessarily going to move my body. So again, it was like that shift from where in my 20s, I woke up early because I wanted to do a hard practice. I was like, I'm just going to drink my tea. Like, that's all I want to do while it's warm. And I started to get into the habit of it. And amazingly, I think maybe you have 3 kids. Like with your second, you're just, it's like you're already exhausted. So, it's like my sleep wasn't as affected. I mean, again, like sleep is always challenging with a newborn, but it was like I wasn't sleeping as it was. And I was like, why not just get up? I'm waking up at 3:30 in the morning anyway. Like, why not just get up? And it's actually been, I feel better when I wake up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning. Then I saw that. Then if I sleep till 6:30 or 7 or later than that. There's something about it's not even just the time to myself or the like enjoying my tea, or I meditate and I journal and I write, or sometimes I do breath work. I mean, it's just that space. I think it's like the body clock too, because in the yoga tradition, that's a very auspicious time of day. You wake up pre-dawn to start all of your rituals so that you are basically praying to the sun as the sun is coming up, right? We're praying for the life force that the sun provides. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's a special time of day. I think it's also having the alone time for sure. And then being able to have the freedom to do any of my practices that I choose.
Great. Thank you. So, in your opinion, what role does vulnerability play in fostering genuine connections, both in the context of yoga classes and your work with moms and primary caregivers? And how do you encourage individuals to embrace vulnerability as a part of their wellness journey?
Yeah. Well, I think vulnerability is such an interesting thing because, I don't know about you, but I was raised with a very hyper independent. My mother was of English descent, so everything was very buttoned up, very, what I thought was, stick straight, I've now realized was actually tightly wound. It's actually just anxiety bound around. But so there wasn't a lot of vulnerability. There was very little tears. There was very little emotion other than anger on some aspects, and love. But there wasn't that in between. There was no gray area, and emotions were kind of seen as weak. And I know for a long time I adopted that, where I thought any sign of vulnerability was weak, and so I hardened myself. But what I've learned over the years of all my self work and getting to hold space for others and now understanding my mom was those hard shells around us are often just protection over how soft and sensitive and malleable we are underneath that all. That, and it is really scary to start to feel if you've never felt in your life before. And it can sometimes feel like literally, like I always think about like a moat, right? Or like a castle's been built around my heart and my emotions. And then you start chipping away, and then it's like floodgates of emotions come in because there's nothing protecting it and there's nothing kind of slowing it down, which is why, again, I highly recommend therapy or a coach or, some kind of guide to help you start to hone things in. But then over time, the flow becomes a little more settled. You learn, like, okay, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to do my writing this morning. I'm going to do my meditation. I'm going to let myself cry. And things start to just become a little softer and a little softer, and the walls come down and the walls come down. And what you realize is that inside was always this beautiful flame, this bright burning flame, that the brighter you shine from your truth and your vulnerability, the more permission it starts to give other people to do that. So then I started showing up publicly like that. And I was just like, which my husband calls oversharing. But I was, I just found power in being like, this is the truth. This is the truth. And in doing so, I started to get responses, and people would come up to me, whether it was after class because of a share, or, nowadays so much is online, and they would say, thank you. I feel the same. Me too. And it just started to kind of bring to the surface, right? This bubble to the surface, a lot more vulnerability from people. And I think that's a lot of it's just the mindfulness practices in general, whether it's meditation or yoga or mantra or prayer, whatever, any of those contemplative practices. If you're willing to do that and to sit and to be with yourself, that's going to break the walls down. But then I think to be a facilitator and to be able to hold space for that is just such a beautiful privilege. And I'm so honored when people come up and they share their story. And I, like you, love interviewing people. That's one of my favorite things. And, I'm like, let's just all share. And so we always think we're so alone, right? Like so often what we think we're going through, we think we're totally alone, or we're so unique, or it's like, the biggest problem in the world. And then you start to share with others, and it just puts your problem in the right size, right? And you then have a community to walk through it with.
It's so true what you're saying about the community, how opening up yourself and getting to know yourself and sharing with others, you become part of this community that when you're alone, that when you're not sharing, when you're not vulnerable, you're even more alone, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
community is, it's so essential for our healing. And, as I've alluded to, coming from a very hyper independent mom who I now just send so much love to. She passed 13 years ago, and she was my best friend, and she did a lot of work in recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous. And, a lot of these references are to her earlier days where she was still pretty much in her disease. But, she done a lot of healing before she passed. So I just want to be clear on that. But we also learn, right, from the generational side of things, is that, when you're raised in a hyper independent home, the motto that you're telling yourself is, I don't need anybody, I can do it all myself. And again, it's that fear of being let down. It's that fear of somebody not showing up for you. It's that fear of someone saying no when you're asking for help. So to keep practicing reaching out for community that is an act of vulnerability in of itself. And then what I know now, especially since becoming a mom, is like, it's impossible, right? It's impossible to do this without having a community and a village around me. I got away with a lot of like, I'll just do it myself. And I sometimes still think I can to an extent, but we need community. We need other people. We need conversation. We need eye contact. We need smiles. We need physical touch and hugs. Never mind deep conversations and people to listen. And, again, this is why therapy can be really helpful for people that are super isolated, because then you have somebody there to listen. But, even friend groups or Facebook groups or, different communities. I go to Al-Anon. That's my community, which is for children, family, friends of alcoholics. So that's one of my communities. And even the yoga room, right? The yoga room itself is a community.
So true, Sarah. So true. I don't know what I would do without my community. With 3 kids, I'm from Brazil, like I told you. So, I embrace people, communities, and I am super open. I'm a Pisces. I cry. I open myself to everyone that I meet.
And it's like there's we have mirror neurons, right? So then, like, from a neurological standpoint, from what's working in the brain, is when we're talking to one another, we're starting to reflect back our feelings. So if you're crying in front of another person, that's why our own tear ducts start to produce tears, and we start to well up as well. It evokes emotions in other people, whether you know what it is about or not, right? So please, like, keep crying, keep bringing up every emotion possible. Share, share, share.
And the hugs. I love
Yeah.
hugs.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the desire to start a movement focused on supporting moms and primary caregivers in creating a space for emotional release and connection. How do you envision this movement impacting not only the participants, but also the broader community? And what steps can individuals take to contribute to such a supportive environment?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's my like life dream. Whew. Well, I think it goes without saying that the main caregiver of any family, so whether you're the caregiver of your elder parents, whether you're a single parent, whether you're in a partnership, if you are taking care, whether you're taking care of your dogs or a house or whatever, if you're taking care of a being, of an entity, how you take care of yourself is going to affect that relationship. And we need the support as the caregiver. We cannot give and give and give until we're empty. And I realized the other day, we often talk about this, like pouring from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. Well, I was thinking more like maybe it's not a well of water, but more like a flame, like a pilot light that needs to be fanned. And again, it's like the bigger you can fan your own pilot light, doing the things that you love, whatever that may be, right? You're from Brazil, I assume. Like, I don't want to make assumptions, but you probably, like, there's like, I don't know, you've got beautiful dancing and beautiful culture there. I love dancing. I love different, movement kind of things. Like, all those things fan my flame. Even just getting up and meditating, right? All those things fan my flame. And when my flame is brighter, I can then light the way for other people. But if our pilot light is way down and out, and we're just running on gas and we're running on fumes, we cannot light the way for others. Then we're both fumbling in the dark. So it is critical as a caretaker, whether you're a mom, a dad, a parent, and you don't identify by either gender, a caretaker for, the elderly people, caretaker in your job. My sister's a teacher, that you are doing things that are fueling your tank, that are fanning your flame so that you can light the way for others. And I think as the others, right, as the village to help support us, I honestly, like, I've been talking a lot about, like, being the village, just being the village, showing up. Something as simple as I'm struggling to get into the grocery store because I've got this giant stroller and I've got a melting down toddler and a screaming baby in one hand. Open the door. Like, I know it seems so simple, but there's many times where people will just stand there or they'll rush past you, and you're invisible in a lot of ways, right? Especially as a mom when you have two screaming kids. But opening the door, right? Something that simple. Buy another mom a coffee in line. Offer, if you have the space, because I've got young kids, you have older kids now. If we lived closer, like, we would offer to somehow, like, maybe I take the older kids for an afternoon and you take the younger kids, or the younger kids get watched by the older kids, like figuring out ways to support one another and showing up and being like, how can I be of service? Because the conception in this country specifically, or at least it's now kind of all of the West, unfortunately, is that part of the hyper independence narrative is that I need help. I can't help you. I need help. But what we don't realize is by helping other people, you're freeing up their mental space for them to be able to help you. So showing up and saying, how can I be of service? So I do this with brand new moms. You know, I'm not a cook. I will never claim to be a cook. You don't want me cooking for you. But whenever a friend has just had a kid, I send them a gift card for food. Like, I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to hold your baby. Maybe I'll come and clean your place, you know, in a couple of years when my kids are older, but that's something I can do. I can send a gift card for food. I can pick up another preschooler when, you know, my son gets picked up, and if another mom needs me to pick up a preschooler, I can do that. Those are little things I can do. And as my kids get older, I can do more and more and more. So it's really being the village. It's showing up for others. It's saying, how can I be of service? And trusting that by being of service to others, that frees up the space for them to also take care of you. That's what a community does.
Beautifully said, Sarah. Thank you. I love what you said, and I agree 100%. It's the little things that you can do for someone else that will start creating that ripple effect and become huge things. I love that.
Yeah.
This was very meaningful. Thank you so much. We wish you only continued success on your great work, Sarah.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you so much for having me.